Death in prison for Mashal Khan's murderers. Almost a year after his brutal death, his justice finally prevailed. I'm Kamali Melbourne, and today's newsmakers, the killers of Mashal Khan. Now, for a man who identified as a humanist, his death was most inhumane. Mashal Khan was murdered by a group of his fellow students. Dragged from his university dorm, Mashal was lynched, his attackers said, because he'd blasphemed. Now, it was all too late when the court found that Mashal had not actually committed blasphemy. The killing sent shockwaves across Pakistan, and many people demanded justice. The trial of those arrested concluded this week with some of the killers sentenced to prison, one given the death penalty. So was this justice? After all, many walked free, some of whom have said they would take the law into their own hands again. Shoaib Hassan has more.
A trial being held behind closed doors, but closely followed across the country. And now a court in Pakistan has convicted some of these men for this brutal lynching. Mashal Khan was a university student. Some fellow pupils accused him of committing blasphemy and beat him to death. His murder shocked Pakistan. And amid widespread public anger, the PTI political party rapidly arrested the suspects. The PTI rules the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province where Mashal was killed, and it's led by former cricket superstar turned politician Imran Khan. He was one of the first to tweet about the conviction, commending what he said was the prosecution team's untiring efforts in giving valuable inputs at the investigative stage and of effective prosecution in the court. But Mashal Khan's family says there were others involved in his killing who haven't been brought to justice.
We were expecting a decision that all the culprits will be punished by the court, all the culprits, and it will be an example, set an example for the people of Pakistan and for international level, to show international level that we have such kind of justice system. But opposite to our expectation, the results was not too much good, so we are going to High Court.
After the verdict was handed down, some suspects found not guilty celebrated their acquittal and appeared to admit in public that they had been involved in Mashal Khan's death.
I was charged in the report. Our spirit and courage is still strong. God willing, no one will again dare to commit blasphemy. Nobody will dare to commit blasphemy if they remember the fate of the dirty heretic Mashal Khan. Mashal was a blasphemer. We stand by our act.
Such extreme views have led human rights groups to say that the mere suspicion of blasphemy in Pakistan can fuel mob violence. Pakistan's blasphemy laws have long been controversial. They currently penalize offenders with prison terms ranging from a year's imprisonment to the death penalty. According to Pakistan's penal code, anyone who defiles the name of Muhammad by the use of derogatory remarks, spoken, written, directly or indirectly, deserves death. Religious groups say the laws are essential given Pakistan's status as an Islamic republic. But rights activists say it's misused to target minorities and settle personal or political grievances, as in the case of Mashal Khan. Could this verdict lead the government to implement safeguards to prevent the law being misused? And could it lead to a change in public opinion in Pakistan and stop such incidents of mob violence? Shoaib Hassan, the newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Karachi by Didibran Nasir. He's a lawyer, civil liberty activist, politician and blogger. And from Islamabad, we have Tariq Pirzada. He's a security and political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Tariq Pirzada, first to you. Now, we've all seen the video of this brutal crime. We've had the conclusion of the trial today, and yet some of those who've been acquitted are now being vaunted as heroes. Why is that taking place?
Number one, let me say very frankly that it has happened after a long time that a case of this nature has been disposed of expeditiously. I think on the face of it, justice has been done. The principal culprit has been sentenced to death, and the other accomplices and abettors, they have been sentenced to 25 years of prison. So on the whole, I think it is a satisfactory result.
You sidestepped the question there, Tariq. You sidestepped the question there. 26 were acquitted, and for many, those guys are now coming off as heroes. Why is that happening?
Okay, the reason is this, that, you know, when a case goes, as a lawyer, I can tell you, when a case goes to the court, everything gets decided based on the facts and the records available to the court that is presented to it by the prosecution and the other side. Now, in this case, those 26 who were released, they were not released for any particular reason. The court simply found that there was not sufficient evidence available or produced against them. And that was the reason. But there is a good news that the provincial government of that province, which is the KPK, they have decided to go into appeal against the acquittal of these 26 people.
And before I bring you in, Gibran, final attempt at this, Tariq. Now, some of those 26 who've been acquitted have also said that they would kill again, they'd take law into their own hands if something like this came up again. Let's not forget that Mashal had not blasphemed. Now, these guys, some of these 26 who've been acquitted, said they would kill again in terms of this blasphemy law. Why are they being vaunted?
No, I don't disagree with you. All I'm saying is the court has to decide the case based on the evidence available to them or produced before them. So that is the case, and this is one reason you partly referenced to that there are certain documents probably or certain of evidence available or certain facts of law are also available that the provincial government has decided to take the matter to the higher court. So I am not disappointed by the result.
OK, Gibran, dig into this for me if you can. The point I was trying to draw out there was the mindset. The mindset that once a brutal killing like this happens with a mob, some of the guys who get away with it say they'll do it again. How does that mindset generate itself, and what can be done to try and stop that sort of thing happening in future?
Well, you see, there's always two ways to look at a situation, and in an ideal world, this was an open and shut case from the beginning, given the vast radiographic evidence and the fact that all the top intelligence agencies of Pakistan were tasked to investigate the matter by the Apex Court of Pakistan. But when you take into account the social, political, and religious realities, which we must, this decision is a welcome verdict. And for that, the credit must go to the police officers, the investigation team, and the members of the prosecution. We must look at it in the context of how in Pakistan religious sentiments are exploited for political and monetary benefits. We must look into the fact that Mashal Khan was a victim of false allegations of blasphemy because he was trying to expose corruption within the university. Now, we also have to see that very recently, a killer of a former governor of Punjab, Salman Taseer, the killer Mumtaz Qadri, a convicted terrorist, has also been turned into a hero by fringe forces looking to mainstream the narrative through threat of violence. So in that context, yes, our present is tainted by the darkness of our past, but this decision is hopefully a step towards a brighter future. Now, when you talk about why the rally took place, why those murderers are being celebrated, or those acquitted are being celebrated, and they're saying that we did commit the murder and we will do it again, this is a war of narratives, and narratives require not just court decisions. That alone cannot be a deterrent. We are looking towards legal, political, social, and educational reforms. And countries struggle for decades to change narratives, only to realize that it is a perpetual pursuit, and who better to understand that than your audience in the Middle East, in Turkey, in US, and in India.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the word reforms there. There have, of course, been some discussion of the reforming of laws. I mean, it was a case that has concluded. Someone has been found guilty and will be sentenced to death. Are you happy with the way this case has played out? And also, are you happy with the blasphemy laws as they currently are structured?
As I mentioned, that in the context of our political and social realities, this is a welcome decision, and that rally of those acquitted, where they're glorifying terrorism, is an unfair representation of the Pakistan society. The vast majority of Pakistan have had their sympathies with the family of Mashal Khan since day one, and are still hopeful for further justice as the provincial government looks towards filing appeal in the matter against the acquittals.
OK, Tariq Pirzada, let's just take this a little bit wider. I'm interested in where you think any blame may well lie with the university here. Now, some members of the university staff were involved in the killing here. There have, of course, been criticisms of the investigation, but do the university have something to answer here in terms of not knocking down the false, proved to be false, claims of blasphemy committed by Mashal Khan?
here is what it is. Since we know the facts of the case in detail, the issue was really not the blasphemy itself. The issue was personal hostility, personal, animus, the elements of discord within the, university environment between these groups. So that issue of blasphemy was actually used to take to destroy the life of that young man.
But
so
how dangerous?
That is the context.
Yeah, absolutely. But how dangerous
That is
is
the
it?
context.
How dangerous is it
sorry, how
that
can I say
blasphemy
that?
law be used as a weapon to try and destroy, as you say, the lives of the young man?
Because it is a convenient weapon. And this is why, I've been appearing on shows and I've been talking about it, that there has been a positive development in Pakistan, that now we have certain cases that have been, in which a verdict has been rendered by the courts, that you just cannot abuse the blasphemy laws. You cannot file a false FIR to get somebody involved. And if that happens, you will be dealt with a strong judicial hand. And this is why, and this was in the paper. This was the day this thing happened. The facts came out pretty fast. The media is very active in Pakistan. Then everybody, even the ordinary people in Pakistan, knew that the issue of blasphemy was primarily used to take personal revenge, and nothing more than that. And this is also one more reason that after this sentence was announced, no riots took place, no discord happened in the news media on this issue. Everybody took a sigh of relief, because apparently while the blasphemy laws were simply used by the killer to defend himself, that was not the fact. Those were not supported by, that was not supported by the facts on the file.
Absolutely not. Gibran, do you take that argument that perhaps in the aftermath of this case, the message will come down to people across Pakistan that they can't weaponize the law of blasphemy?
The law isn't without its faults and lacunas, and that has been extensively debated both nationally and internationally regarding Pakistan. However, we must also look into administrative measures or lack thereof, which I believe also embolden vigilantism. Pakistan is a young nation where half the population is around under the bracket of 30, and to ensure a progressive society, we have to focus on various facets, primarily beginning with instilling a notion of civic responsibility among citizens, where we respect each other's constitutional fundamental rights, which includes the right to a fair trial and due process, right to life, protection from torture. Furthermore, also ensuring from the state's end that rule of law is not made a mockery of, and it's equally applied everywhere. But like I said, political and monetary benefits are actually often behind when such allegations are being used. But the state now, when reflecting on this, when still fighting this case, has to take into account that on that fateful day, on 13th April, two kinds of futures were lost in Pakistan. One was of Mashal Khan, the student who became the victim, and the other was of those 60-odd students who, from students, rather than becoming a brighter prospect for Pakistan, became criminals and murderers. And why those young minds were being preyed on, and who was preying on them, and why isn't enough administrative measures being put in place to ensure that hate speech isn't used, to show that religion isn't exploited, and to ensure that those people who use false allegations of blasphemy are taken to task. And for that matter, legal reforms is a must in Pakistan.
What kind of legal reforms do you want? There must be hate speech laws. Of course, in Pakistan, there are laws against blasphemy. What kind of legal reforms do you think would work?
I have something to add on this.
When it comes to hate speech in Pakistan, when it comes to hate speech in Pakistan, the authority or the right to file or register a criminal case is with the state, the provincial or the federal government, not with the citizen. So, of course, the onus falls on them. But when you talk about false allegation, we, of course, have laws that you cannot mislead a court by giving false evidence about someone who may or may not have committed blasphemy. But we need further laws to ensure that social media or electronic media or print media or, for example, university campuses are not allowed to exploit sentiments, to agitate people, to incite violence, and to that extent enough enough measures are not in place within our legal system to ensure that does not happen. However, like I said, this decision is a step in the right direction, but we are far away from our destination. Hopefully, we'll carry on this journey.
Tariq Pirzada, make your point.
Yeah, actually, there is a very strong law against incitement on the issue of religion and inciting one community against another, inciting any person against the religion of any second person. So that law is a part of the Pakistan Penal Code. It's a very strong law. The issue in Pakistan is actually not the laws themselves. It is the enforcement of the laws. It is the interpretation of the laws by the courts and the lawyers on both sides. Once we get used to effectively enforcing our laws and the system becomes more and more responsive to the need against those people who use incitement as a means of revenging somebody, taking revenge, or getting somebody hurt. So this law is very powerful at the present time in the context of inciting the religious feelings, especially based on blasphemy laws or other excuses. That is not allowed under the law at the present time. And as a matter of fact, as I said earlier, these days, if you get a false FIR, first information report filed before the police, and it turns out that it was false, very strong action is now recommended to be taken by the law, against those people.
Final point then to you, Gibran Nasir. How do you feel looking forward? Sorry, let me just put the question. How do you feel looking forward then, in light of what we've seen over the past year or so in terms of Pakistan? Of course, the spread of social media, the spread of rumours will, of course, continue. With that in place, you will get false rumours in place, and this thing may happen again.
See, this wasn't the first case where blasphemy allegations were falsely applied with malintentions, and this may not be the last if we continue to act like firefighters. We need to look at the bigger picture, the social, political, religious, economic, and educational phenomena, as I mentioned earlier. Pakistan has made a lot of sacrifices, dedicatedly fighting against terrorism and the hate narrative, laying down a lot of life of our civilians and our soldiers, and we cannot allow some fringe forces to use religion, to use blasphemy laws, to use religious sentiments in our streets to again take members of our youth, to take a section of society towards that hate narrative. The citizens, the civil society at large, the government and the state together and the judiciary are working to form and build a narrative. But like I said, it's going to be a struggle which is going to take decades. Countries around the world have come round circle back to struggling with racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and other kinds of ills. And in Pakistan, the struggle is the same. And we, I believe, on a global perspective, are joint in this struggle.
Absolutely. OK, Gibran Nasir, Tariq Pirzada, gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time. Still to come on the Newsmakers, allegations Israel is bombing Daesh in the Sinai with Egypt's approval. Is there a secret alliance between Tel Aviv and Cairo? And conflicting reports that Zimbabwe's opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai is critically ill. What comes next for his party?
The army and police will avenge our martyrs and return security and stability with force in the coming short period.
Now, Egypt has suffered several attacks by terror groups based in northern Sinai, and Cairo struggled to defeat those responsible. Now, it appears the government may have enlisted the help of an unlikely ally. A report by the New York Times says that over the past 2 years, Israel has carried out more than 100 airstrikes inside Egyptian territory, targeting Daesh. The news, which Cairo denies, has shocked many. Now, Egypt and Israel have gone to war 3 times in the last 6 decades, and President Sisi's government says that his forces are the only ones fighting terror groups in the Sinai. So, is there a secret alliance or not? And if there is, how does it impact regional relations? Well, to try and get to the bottom of this, I'm joined from Tel Aviv by Neri Zilber. He's an Israel analyst and former executive of the World Jewish Congress. From London is Ali El-Kabani. He's a specialist on Egyptian affairs and the former general manager of the Islamic Press Agency. In completing our panel from Washington is the Middle East analyst, the columnist, Sigurd Nurabauer. Gentlemen, welcome. First of all, to you, Ali El-Kabani, and putting aside just for the moment, if you will, please, wider issues of Palestine and regional stability, because we'll come to those later in the discussion. As a mere tactic to remove terrorists from part of your country, do you support Sisi's fight and perhaps alliance with Israel?
We have to realize first that the military rule in Egypt from day one relied on close cooperation with the Zionist entity, because America stopped all the military aid to Egypt after the military coup, because the American law does not allow any aid to go from the United States to a regime in which a military coup took place. So Sisi's regime contacted Netanyahu in Israel to use the Israeli lobby in the United States to assume that what happened in Egypt was the will of the Egyptian people and it was not a military coup. As such, they resumed sending the military aid of $1.3 billion annually to Egypt in the last 3-4 years. So the cooperation between Sisi's regime and the Zionist regime in Tel Aviv is very strong. And actually, the Israelis made more than 100 air attacks on Sinai to attack what they call terrorist and the ISIS elements in the Sinai region.
Sorry, just
All
speak up on
Israeli newspapers
Ali El-Kabani,
admitted this fact.
Ali El-Kabani, sorry to interrupt you.
We are actually accusing the Egyptian of not recognizing it.
If you let me finish my question. You said so-called terrorists. Do you not think that there is Daesh elements in the northern Sinai that have been attacking Christians in the past couple of months and killed hundreds?
You know, there is always rumors that there are Daesh forces in Sinai. But the funny thing is, they only do certain terrorist attacks when it suits Sisi's regime.
Attacking Christians, sorry, I have to speak up on that again. Mr. El-Kabani, attacking Coptic Christians suits Mr. Sisi's regime. Is that what you're actually telling us?
I'm saying that these attacks actually happen only when it suits the regime and that serve their interests, and also to allow the Israelis to have a free hand in Sinai to attack as and when they need, again also to help their own interests, not specially to help the Egyptian people.
OK, we'll leave that where it is for now. Neri Zelba and Tel Aviv, just come in for me if you would. If you can go back to the point that I first tried to make to Mr. El-Kabani, the alliance that may be being played out between Egypt and Israel in terms of a fight against terrorism, do you think it's a good idea?
There is definitely terrorism going on in the Sinai. It is definitely ISIS affiliated, if not directed. They've killed hundreds, not only local Egyptians in the northern Sinai, but also, as you mentioned, Coptic Christians, Russian tourists, and all the way down into Egypt proper, as it were. So it's a real security issue for the Egyptian government, for the Sisi government, and what the New York Times laid out publicly just a few days ago was the fact that there is cooperation between Israel and Egypt on this very important and delicate security issue. And they're assisting the Egyptian authorities and the military in trying to put down what is has proven to be a very difficult insurgency in the Sinai. And I think this is all for the good.
OK. Sigurd Nurba, just come in on that for me, please, if you would. As quickly as you can, just bring together some of those ideas of the fight against war and take this a step further for us, which I kind of know where Ali El-Kabani is going to come on this point. But in terms of being a peace broker in the Middle East for the Palestinian cause, Egypt allying with Israel fighting Daesh is going to cause problems.
Well, first of all, I think that there's important to add a historic perspective here to this discussion, and that is that following the 1979 Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty, both parties agreed to that the Sinai Peninsula would be demilitarized. And because of that, there's no Egyptian law enforcement in that area. And because Egypt is struggling with insecurity and structural challenges from an economic situation that is pretty severe, the Israelis and the Egyptians, which enjoy a peace treaty and enjoy a pragmatic relationship, and it is important to emphasize that what states do is that they cooperate. Egypt and Israel have a strong neighborly relationship. The Israelis have the capability to provide modern technology and intelligence cooperation capabilities to track Daesh in the Sinai. That is a fact. There are other terrorist cells there as well. But I also want to turn it to the other side, and that is that Egypt has also been an important partner on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. You surely remember in 2014, during the last Israel-Gaza war, it was the Egyptians that helped broker the eventual ceasefire between those parties. And to put it forward, just last week in Brussels, the European Union hosted the ACDL meeting, which is the principal coordination committee for the Palestinian people to build a Palestinian state. The international summit was convened by the EU but chaired by Norway. That will work to help bring forward President Trump's peace plan between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the Egyptian foreign minister, Samuel Sukri, was in Brussels last week. So it is expected that the Egyptians, along with the Emiratis and Saudis, will work together with the Palestinians and Israel to bring forward President Trump's peace plan. So Egypt has been very helpful to the Israelis when it comes to the Palestinian file, and the Israelis are very, very helpful when it comes to security cooperation in the Sinai. And this is normal diplomacy, this is normal security cooperation, and from the American perspective, this is a welcome development.
Ali El-Kamani, do you take any of that on face value? Do you think that in some slightly perverse way that some may see that an alliance between Egypt and Israel may actually end up helping the Palestinians?
In the matter of fact, I've got many reservations about what was said. There is no peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. There is a surrender treaty in which Egypt got back Sinai and lost its sovereignty over its own land. And as your guest said, the Egyptian army and the security forces cannot go into Sinai without the permission of the Israelis to make sure and to secure this region, which is an integral part of the Egyptian territories. The other thing is, if Israel is interested in peace with the Palestinian, and again, if Donald Trump is interested in peace, there is the international law and there is the United Nations resolution 242, 338, which say that Israel is occupying land since 1967 war illegally and building settlement on these territories which belongs to the Palestinians illegally. So the peace, if we want to achieve it, is very clear. Israel have to abide with United Nations resolution and withdraw from all land occupied after the war of 1967. They are saying that the 242 say from land occupied, not all the land. And this is again an interpretation which violates the international law, because the international law states clearly that no country can occupy and annex the land of another country if this land were gained after a war and by force.
Okay.
So Israel got this
We've got to move it on here, please, Ali El-Kamani.
And other Arab territories after the June 67 war by force.
You made your point, sir. Neri Zilbert, let's just take this a step wider if we can, please, and talk about the way that it does seem as if Israel is allying itself with some Arab nations. We've got this report, of course, in the New York Times. We've got rumours of cooperation with the Saudis. How is Israel positioning itself going forward, and how will alliance with some of those nations play out, do you think, domestically for the Israelis?
Well, you're right. It is, so to speak, a new Middle East. States that were formerly hold on, sir. States that were formerly enemies with Israel, adversarial with Israel, are now cooperating, if not publicly, then behind the scenes, primarily on intelligence and, as you mentioned, security cooperation, whether against Daesh in the Sinai or perhaps in Syria as well, in the Syrian border, as well as against Iran, which Israel views as the primary threat in the Middle East.
So can you explain
so
for
I
us
think,
why
as far as the Israeli government is concerned, there are new. Hold on, sir. I let you speak. There are new opportunities as far as Israel is concerned. My own take is that the current Israeli government might see it as a way around the Palestinian issue, and that's going to be the real question for the Arab states, whether they go public with this kind of new and evolving relationship with Israel, despite the Palestinian issue not being resolved, and that's still an open question.
Okay, and just let's give the final word then to Sigurd. Sigurd, do you expect that this cooperation... So
why the Arab states are shying away from declaring this cooperation?
You've made your point, Ali El-Kamani. We will come back to you if we can, but let's just give final thoughts here to Sigurd Nubau. Do we expect this cooperation to continue and perhaps increase in coming years? As Neddy was mentioning, the closeness that Israel seems to be creating with Saudi Arabia seems like it's a growing trend.
Look, the mechanisms for a comprehensive Israeli-Arab peace treaty has been spelled out in the Arab Peace Initiative, and for that reason, there have to be significant moves between the Israelis and the Palestinians to hash out differences between themselves. What we do know is that President Trump's objective and strategy for the region is to bring the Israelis together with the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which are the 6 U.S. allies in the Persian Gulf. And by bringing them together, what the administration is hoping is to isolate Iran in the region. And for that reason, we're going to expect that President Trump will try to push both the Israelis and the Palestinians to make the necessary concessions for a peace agreement. We're expecting that the Arab states, including Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia in the back, will provide international support for the administration's peace push. This is coming up. Of course, the peace plan by the administration will be released at a suitable time, both for a domestic audience and also to ensure that the conditions on the ground are ripe. We see a lot of diplomatic maneuvering going on, including the meeting that I mentioned last week. It is very positive that the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and the Israelis are responding to President Trump's peace initiative.
Sigurd.
There is some positive momentum here.
Okay, Sigurd Nubau, thank you. We have run out of time. Sigurd Nubau in Washington, Ali El-Kabani in London, and Neddy Zilba in Tel Aviv. Thank you, gentlemen, for your passionate argument, and thanks for joining us. Could Zimbabwe's main opposition party soon be without a leader? Well, earlier this week, reports emerged that Morgan Tsvangirai is critically ill. His supporters had been told to prepare for the worst, but a spokesman for the party has refuted those claims, saying Tsvangirai is doing just fine. But with a question mark hanging over the party's founder, does the movement for democratic change face an uncertain future? And how will it impact their hopes at the ballot box later in the year? Vanessa Keneally reports.
Zimbabwe's main opposition leader, in a show of strength to his supporters last November. Now Morgan Tsvangirai is lying weak in hospital with colon cancer. The 65-year-old has been getting treatment in Johannesburg since June 2016. Some of his supporters have been told to brace for the worst, but a Twitter account claiming to speak on behalf of Tsvangirai recently posted, "I am shocked to read in the press that I am in a critical condition. Of course I have cancer and I'm not feeling too well, but I am stable and the process is under control. I have been frequently on Twitter of late. I am recovering." One of the last times he was seen in public was in early January when he was visited at his home in Harare by President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
He's fine, he's cooperating very well. He says he will soon again going back to another medical checkups in South Africa.
The question is whether Tsvangirai will regain enough strength to challenge Mnangagwa in presidential elections tipped to take place before September. The The timing of Tsvangirai's illness couldn't be worse for Zimbabwe politically. In November, the country had its first change of power in 37 years after the ousting of President Robert Mugabe. Tsvangirai had been a member of Mugabe's ZANU-PF while Zimbabwe transitioned to independence from Britain in 1980. But by the end of that decade, his involvement with the country's trade unions soured that relationship, with Mugabe accusing him of being a puppet of the British government. Tsvangirai founded his own party called the Movement for Democratic Change and positioned himself in direct opposition to Mugabe. Later, he was severely beaten while in police custody, but managed to go on to become Prime Minister under Mugabe for 4 years, before the post was abolished. Some believe his experience made him a perfect person to take over the country. But now his bad health could end those hopes. And he's already appointed Nelson Chamisa as acting party leader. Many in Zimbabwe think without Tsvangirai at the helm, the party could split, as it has done twice before, and become incapable of defeating the sitting president later this year. Vanessa Keneally, The Newsmakers.
Well, let's go now to our panel. I'm joined from Leicester in the United Kingdom by Tondelai Samanyanga. He's the UK chairman of Morgan Tsvangirai's Movement for Democratic Change. In Johannesburg is Tino Modaishe Chinyoka. He's a human rights lawyer. And in Harare is Nigel Magamu. He's a journalist and the founder of Zimbabwe's news organisation 263 Chat. Now, Tondelai Samanyanga, as I alluded earlier, there's been some confusion today, so exactly who is in charge of the MDC? Can you clear it up for us?
I believe the information is there in the media explaining who is there, and there have been some information of change of who is acting, which has been clarified. At the moment, I don't want to really speculate on who is the leader, because in the 3 vice presidents that are in with the MDC, they will all have special assignment given to them. And as we are speaking today, the Vice President Nelson Chamisa was addressing the parliamentary caucus at the Harvest House. So each of the vice presidents has got a responsibility, and we've got the acting president being Elias Muzuri, Engineer Elias Muzuri, and also the spokesperson of the party has sent a statement regarding the Vice President Chamisa acting whilst Vice President Muzuri is in South Africa. I don't want to go into the official position of it because I haven't verified this information with the leadership. It's what we are hearing from the media. But as far as we are concerned, the MDC is still moving on with their operation, with their responsibility in offices.
But you say moving on with their responsibility. If they can't even decide who is in charge of the party currently, how can they be an effective opposition?
It is an effective opposition in that we are structured in a way to move forward with the responsibilities. Like, for instance, the issues regarding coalition are being dealt with in the office of the Vice President Chamisa, and looking at the running of the party and the administration of the party in the background has always been Mama Thokozani Kupe, the Deputy President. And when the President went to South Africa, he appointed acting President Elias Muzuri. So we are quite clear on who is in charge of what responsibility at the moment. The merit of the appointments is another debate, and which would take a little bit while for us to come to an agreement, depending on which side you are standing or on which platform you are standing. But otherwise, on activity-wise, we are moving forward.
Tino Modaishe Chinyoka in Harare for us. While, of course, everyone is waiting and praying for a clean and for Morgan Tsvangirai to pull through, do ZANU-PF have a bit of an opportunity here to cement their charge of the country?
One does not normally want to be involved in a fight where the other party is not throwing any punches. But yes, the short answer would be that this confusion within the main opposition, as it were, creates an opportunity for ZANU-PF to go into elections perhaps with a weaker opponent than would otherwise have been the case. The only caveat I would put to that is that, unfortunately, this is a party that does not want to face up to the fact that there are problems. As you have heard from my brother Tsvangirai, I like him. I like how he says this is another debate for another day. But this confusion about leadership means that the MDC is not going to be ready for elections. And my problem is, if they are not ready for elections, come results day when they lose, are they going to say we lost because we're disorganized, in disarray, and without leadership, or are they going to go back to the old song and say ZANU-PF rigged the elections? That's the problem.
Nigel Mugamu, what do you make of this? We've got an opposition in seeming disarray and a party in power that are just looking to cement it, don't even want to have the fight because the other guy is not throwing punches. What do you make of what's going on so far?
So I'll speak as a journalist and as a voter. You know, what we're obviously seeing here is a situation where ZANU-PF managed to evolve in November, you know, and they now have a new leader. And with a new leader, they've got a new lease on life. And the new leader is speaking all the right things, seemingly that you know, we Zimbabweans and the international community want to hear. What I'm failing to understand is what the MDC stands for right now, today, the 8th of February 2018. What do they stand for, and what and why should people vote for them?
Nigel, let's get an answer. Nigel, let's get an answer from that. Tsvangirai, you were listening in. What do the MDC stand for currently?
Well, the MDC has always stood for the people of Zimbabwe to bring about democracy and a new dispensation in Zimbabwe. We have suffered an economic decline for years under the leadership of Robert Mugabe. And in that leadership of Robert Mugabe, Mnangagwa was the lieutenant. Since the Liberation War, he was part of the group that has been working on this economic decline in Zimbabwe. The MDC is working to change the government, change the status quo, so as it can usher in new programs that can benefit the people of Zimbabwe. From experience in the government of national unity, we managed to influence the transformation of Zimbabwe to a stable economy at that period of time. And today, as we are looking at it, the Zimbabwean economy has gone back to the 2007, 2008 situation again, because the same ZANU-PF has managed to run away with the elections through mechanism of rigging. As of today, we are concentrating on building a greater alliance. We are concentrating on engaging our grassroots, and the activities are there on the ground where we are engaging the people, the masses of the people, and listening to the people so as we can deliver a new Zimbabwe. Okay. So we still have things to offer for the country.
Of course, I mean, we'll get Tino Mudaishe to respond to that allegation of vote rigging. But Nigel, you heard an answer there from Tsvangirai. Are you satisfied with that?
Look, you know, if you know, like you rightly, stated, look, I run an online publication, and the articles that we've published in the last couple of, weeks, will focus on, issues to do with the party fight, the infighting, or, Nelson Chamisa said 15 billion. What we really ought to hear, what the citizens ought to hear more of is the issue around what are they actually going to do when they're in power? What are their policies when it comes to, foreign direct investment or indigenization, or what is their, what plans do they have to develop this country and take it forward? I think that's what the general citizen wants to hear, and less of the fighting.
Tino Mudaishe, just respond first of all to that allegation of vote rigging, and also further, ZANU-PF have not bathed themselves in glory in the past few years. The allegations of vote rigging are there. The economy in Zimbabwe is not doing as well as it perhaps should be doing. What is your party going to do, should you not have an effective opposition to fight in the general election, to bring about what the people of Zimbabwe want?
Well, first of all, if you asked even Tsvangirai in 1999 what the MDC stood for, he would have spoken about the principles that the MDC stood for: democratic change, democratization of the country, reorganizing the economy, you know, bringing back freedoms that are in the Constitution but which were not being observed. Now, today, the conversation in the MDC, and even how you started this panel discussion, was about the MDC leadership. So the MDC has moved from a party of principle and positions to a party of personalities and political positions for individuals, in particular the four people vying for the leadership after Tsvangirai or while Tsvangirai is still there. And that's problematic. In terms of what Tsvangirai said in answer to this question, as you noticed, there was a mention of Mugabe there. Now, unfortunately, and this is a very difficult thing, piece of news for me to break to Tsvangirai and many other people in the MDC, Mugabe is gone. You can't keep running an election talking about how Mugabe mismanaged the economy, how Mnangagwa was his lieutenant, and all this and that. Because the people of Zimbabwe can see that since November, we have a new president who is not cut from the same cloth as Robert Mugabe. So if the opposition runs an election based on what Mugabe used to do with his lieutenants, that is a recipe for failure. The president that we have right now is focused on jobs, 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 he has said. He is a president who is doing things completely differently from how Mugabe was doing. For example, we had a very unpopular Minister of Education. He was reappointed by this president. There was an outcry. 3 days later, he was gone. This is a president who listens. So you need to engage with Mnangagwa as president now and see what he's doing. The things that he's talking about reorganizing our economy, re-engaging with the international community, he is already doing it.
How much of
the
that
MDC
do you agree
doesn't
with?
have an answer to all that.
Thank you, Tino Madashe. Nigel, how much of that do you actually agree with, that we have seen a proper step change since Mugabe stepped down and Mnangagwa took control?
Look, there's obviously changes. I mean, you know, Mnangagwa went to Davos last month. We've got international observers that are allowed to come in and observe the elections, not just observers from the African continent. You know, the minister of you know, from the UK who oversees Africa, you know, was just here I think last week. We're seeing there was a Russian billionaire who was here just last week as well, just looking into investing in here in Zimbabwe. So there's obviously things that are different. You know, we weren't having this conversation 4 months ago. We didn't. 5 months ago, we weren't having these kinds of conversations. But the challenge is, look, I live here in Harare. I'm a citizen of Harare. MDC, you know, runs the municipalities here, the city council here. If I judge them based on that alone, you know, and I see the focus on leadership and arguments over who's acting and who's not. What I simply want as a citizen is service delivery. I want you to collect my rubbish on time and to deliver water to all of us, clean running water to all of us. That's really what I want as a citizen. So, you know, to talk to me about leadership and who's acting, look, I don't care about that. You know, and I think a lot of people generally don't care about that. I think what people want are real tangible things that they can hold on to, and what they're seeing from the current government are things that are leading to some sort of tangible benefits, sometime in the future. So we need to stop talking about the past and really start living today. And I use I gave you the date. Today is the 8th of February. What are we doing today and tomorrow and going forward?
Well, final point then to you, Tsvangirai Samanyanga. You've heard there from Nigel what the people want is just to see water running in the streets, the electricity to be on. Without a leader, how are you going to achieve that? And please tell me, who is going to contest the election for the MDC as leader?
Well, I appreciate the issues being raised by Nigel and the expectation and all that. It helps us as an opposition, a government in waiting, to really focus on the issues that we might have missed in some areas. Preparation for the elections as MDC and even the MDC alliance, Morgan Tsvangirai is still the president, He's recovering in hospital in South Africa. The decision was made to allow him to concentrate on the recovery rather than him running around organizing the party. And for the coming elections, we still have got President Morgan Tsvangirai as our candidate, and even the alliance partners are exactly saying the same because they've got an update as to the situation of health of President Morgan Tsvangirai. It's unfortunate that our leader has not been well, and we still pray to God that he recover and recover fully in time and ready to lead the masses into the election. But in the event that the unfortunate happen, MDC is not starved of leaders. All the issues that you are talking about, who is who in the MDC, shows the potential that we have in many of our leaders. But a process has to ensue within MDC. We've got our own internal process guided by the Constitution, where in the event that we need a new leader, we go through a process of extraordinary Congress to elect a leader, and that is constitutionally binding. And we are not discussing that because we are seeing the progress in the recovery of the president, regardless of the media call that sometimes even announce his death when he is still alive. It's unfortunate we are in that situation, and people are crazy about raising unfound positions regarding his health, regarding him dying, when we need to pray for our leader for him to recover.
Okay, the people of Zimbabwe continue to wait to see who will lead their opposition. Tonderai Samanyanga, Tino Mudashe Chinyoka and Nigel Mugamu, thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Well, that's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Kamali Melbourne. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Thanks for watching and goodbye.